He kissed his 3 sons goodnight. His wife brought him his favorite drink. He never woke up. The toxicology report found 5 times the lethal dose of fentanyl in his blood. Months later, his wife published a children's book. She dedicated it to him. Here is their story. On the night of March 4th, 2022, Kouri Richins kissed his 3 young sons goodnight and went to bed. His wife, Kouri, brought him a Moscow Mule, his favorite drink. He took a few sips. He fell asleep, and by morning he was dead. He was 39 years old, a successful real estate developer, a father, a husband. Authorities initially called it a cardiac event, a tragic, unexpected death, but 2 things stood out. Kouri Richins was in perfect health, and his wife had already Googled the lethal dose of fentanyl. Kouri Richins was, by all accounts, a genuinely good man. Born and raised in Utah, he built a successful career in real estate and construction. He was devoted to his 3 young sons. Friends described him as generous, hardworking, and deeply committed to his family. He had built the kind of life most people dream of: a beautiful home, a thriving business, and the people he loved all around him. Kouri Richins, his wife of 10 years, seemed to have it all. The home in Summit County, Utah, 3 boys, a social media presence filled with family photos and motivational captions. To the outside world, she was the picture of the devoted wife and mother. But underneath that carefully constructed image, investigators would find a very different story. The couple had married in 2012. They had 3 sons together. But according to those close to the family, the marriage had been in trouble for years. Kouri had reportedly been trying to end things. He had consulted a divorce attorney, and he had a prenuptial agreement, one that, if enforced, would leave Kouri with significantly less than she expected. On the night of March 4th, 2022, Kouri and Kouri had dinner together. Sometime that evening, Kouri made him a Moscow Mule, a cocktail she had made for him before. He drank it. He went to sleep. Sometime during the night, his heart stopped. When emergency services arrived the next morning, Kouri Richins was gone. The medical examiner's toxicology report found fentanyl in Kouri's system, approximately 5 times what would constitute a lethal dose. It had not been prescribed to him. He had no history of drug use. The fentanyl had been placed in his drink. This was not a cardiac event. This was a homicide. Summit County investigators launched a homicide investigation. They began retracing the days and weeks before Kouri's death, and what they found painted a deeply disturbing picture. Kouri had not just been in financial trouble. She had been systematically trying to acquire fentanyl in the months before he died. Investigators discovered that March 2022 was not the first time Kouri had become mysteriously ill after Kouri prepared food or drinks for him. In 2021, there had been at least 2 prior incidents where Kouri suffered sudden, unexplained episodes that left him disoriented and unwell. On one occasion, he had shown up at a family member's home completely out of it, confused, barely able to stand. One of the most critical witnesses was Carmen Lauber, the Richins family's housekeeper. Lauber received an immunity deal from prosecutors. In exchange, she told investigators what she had seen inside that home, testimony that once revealed would become some of the most damning evidence of the entire case. Perhaps the most chilling detail of the entire case is this. While investigators were quietly building their homicide case against her, Kouri Richins sat down and wrote a children's book. The book is called Are You With Me? It is a story about a mother helping her children grieve the loss of their father. She had it professionally published. She then went on national television to promote it. In televised interviews, Kouri spoke softly about processing loss, about finding a way to explain death to young children, about keeping Kouri's memory alive for their sons. She cried on camera. Audiences sympathized. Not one of them knew that prosecutors believed the woman on screen had poisoned the man she was mourning. When investigators dug into the family's finances, what they found was staggering. Kouri and Kouri were carrying approximately $7.5 million in debt, most of it tied to real estate investments that had gone badly. Eric had been trying to manage the situation. He also had a prenuptial agreement that Kouri believed stood between her and financial security if they divorced. Prosecutors also revealed that Kouri had taken out a life insurance policy on Eric without his knowledge. The policy had been forged with Eric's apparent signature. It was worth $100,000. In addition, investigators found evidence of a long-running secret affair between Kouri and a contractor named Robert Josh Grossman, someone Eric had hired to work on their properties. Robert Josh Grossman had worked for the Richins family for years. He and Kouri had been carrying on an affair that Eric was unaware of. Grossman would eventually cooperate with investigators, providing testimony about the relationship and what he knew. His account added another dimension to the prosecution's portrait of motive. When investigators obtained Kouri's phone records, they found what would become the centerpiece of the prosecution's case. In the period before Eric's death, Kouri had searched for the lethal dose of fentanyl. She had searched for women's prisons in Utah. She had looked up how long fentanyl stays detectable in the body. She had also made contact with a source for controlled substances. Investigators traced the fentanyl to a man Kouri had purchased controlled substances from multiple times before Eric's death. He was later charged separately. Prosecutors argued that the March 4th poisoning was not impulsive. It was the third attempt, carefully planned, carefully executed, and documented unwittingly by Kouri herself. Kouri Richins was arrested in May 2023, more than a year after Eric's death. Her arrest came just as the national press attention around her children's book was peaking. The contrast was stark, and the story immediately became international news. Here was a woman who had written a grief book for children, now charged with murdering their father. The trial drew enormous public attention. Prosecutors presented the phone searches, the financial records, the forged insurance documents, the testimony of the housekeeper and Grossman, and the toxicology report showing 5 times the lethal dose. The defense argued that Kouri had been unaware of the fentanyl, that someone else was responsible. The jury did not believe her. On March 16, 2026, Kouri Richins was found guilty on all 5 counts. 1 count of aggravated murder and 4 counts of distribution of a controlled substance causing death. She faces a mandatory minimum of life in prison. Sentencing is set for May 13, 2026, which would have been Eric's birthday. Eric Richins left behind 3 sons, 3 boys who will grow up with a grief that no children's book can explain because their father did not die from illness or accident. He was taken from them, deliberately. By the person who was supposed to protect them, those boys will one day read about this case. They will search for answers, and they will find them. The case of Kouri Richins is a reminder that the most dangerous threat can wear the most familiar face. That behind closed doors, in the safest-looking homes, in the most ordinary moments, a drink before bed, evil can exist in a form no one suspects. Eric Richins trusted the person who made his last drink. He died in his own bed, and for nearly 4 years, the woman who allegedly killed him lit candles, posted on social media, and told the world she was grieving.